to... Okay, we are now recording. I will be sharing the recording just with my viewers on YouTube within the next couple of days. And I have a question about my beautiful baby here in the chat, and I promise to share that when we finish. I will tell you all about him. Some of you have been with me since before I even got pregnant with Dylan, and crazy thing is he's now a toddler. Anyway, here we go. Let me just give you a quick idea of the setting of our story. So the majority of our story today will take place in Venice. When we think of Italian Renaissance, we often think of Florence, as a lot of the artwork was created there by the Florentine School of Art. But the artists that I will be mentioning today, almost all of them come from Florence. And when we talk about Renaissance, and in a couple moments I will show you some examples to explain my points of how Venetian art stands out, we normally think about Florentine Renaissance, Leonardo da Vinci, Raphael, all of these artists. They are representatives of the Florentine branch of the Renaissance. However, Renaissance also existed in Venice. And interestingly enough, Venetian Renaissance was somewhat different from Florentine Renaissance. But then, what makes, I think, works by Titian even more incredible is that in the branch of Renaissance that already stands out from the rest of Renaissance, Titian stands out from the other artists even more. When we talk about works of Titian, technically we identify him as a Renaissance artist. However, some art historians will argue that at least some of his works fall under the umbrella of Mannerism, which came after Renaissance and is described as art that is way more decorative and in a way less deep than Renaissance art. Mannerism is often looked down at by art historians and art connoisseurs. And some art historians even describe Titian as Baroque artist. And a big reason why there are so many arguments and so many different theories about the works of Titian is that Titian as a person was very unique in a way that most likely he lived a very long life. Different biographers argue as to what was the birth date of Titian. But the earliest birth date that is named is 1476. 1476. Some biographers say that he was born later. Some say maybe in 1490s even. But we know for sure when he died, and he died in 1576. Now, if we believe those biographers that say that he was born in 1476, it means that Titian lived an incredibly long life of 100 years. Think about somebody who lived in the 15th, 16th century to live for 100 years. It's unbelievable. And then even if we take one of the latest dates of birth of Titian, even then he would have lived quite a long life, 75, 80. Again, for that time, it's incredibly long. And so he happens to live on this verge between, Renaissance in full bloom, moving into late Renaissance, and then merging into Mannerism and Baroque. So this is the perfect time an incredibly long life. And Titian, he had all this time to evolve, all this time to try to explore different art movements, so to say. And then there was also his personality. It's believed that Titian was born in the mountain area near Venice, and at least in Russia, we believe that mountain men are strong and healthy, full of passions, full of lust for life. And we will really see a lot of that in his work. But so far, most of the things I said, they have been pretty vague. I haven't shown you any examples. So let's move to some particular examples that will help me illustrate my point when it comes to how Venetian art stands out from the rest of the Renaissance, and then yet how Titian stands out even more. Here we go. First, a couple examples of the art that is considered the height of Florentine Renaissance. Here you see two works by Raphael. On the left, a religious painting. On the right, a portrait of the love of Raphael's life. What I can say about these paintings is that, first of all, they feel really static, especially the painting on the left. It looks beautifully staged. There are even curtains on the side, right? Everything is beautifully staged. Everything is beautifully static. And all the details are so carefully worked through. The amount of light and shade, the prevalence of line and composition is what really characterizes Florentine art. Now, when we talk about Venetian Renaissance, some of the characteristics are very similar. We see beautiful symmetrical composition in this painting by Giovanni Bellini. But one thing that is different about the Florentine branch of the Renaissance is that in Florence, color was considered at least as important, if not more important, than the line and the composition. And I will go back to the work by Raphael to illustrate my point here. And notice these two paintings and how many shades of color Raphael uses. And now notice this work by Bellini. There's so many more colors in this piece. And so many more different shades. And the colors are just so much brighter. And it's believed that in Florentine Renaissance, color was really given a lot of attention, as expressive means. And it's not without a reason that I place a work by Bellini here as an example, because Giovanni Bellini was one of Titian's first teachers. Early in his career, Titian started working in Bellini's workshop, but he did not stay in that workshop for a long time because Titian himself was not fully connecting with Bellini's style. He believed that Bellini's style was not expressive enough and a little bit too static for him. And so Titian moved on to a different teacher who inspired him a lot more, and that was Giorgione. And you can see Giorgione, is believed to be, before Titian, Venice's best #1 artist. I think when you look at this beautiful painting called The Tempest by Giorgione, you can really see the rich, incredibly bright colors. And the the painting known as The Tempest here is really, if we talk about its genre, it's supposed to be a landscape painting. And it was not uncommon to place some people in a landscape painting. Like, this is supposed to be a soldier and a gypsy woman, based on the full name of the painting. But really, the landscape and nature plays the main role in the painting. It's placed at the center here. And unlike a couple the couple Renaissance paintings that I showed you earlier, here we can really see how much nature is starting to convey the general mood of the painting, right? It's called The Tempest, and the general mood of the painting here is this uncertainty, right? Something major is about to happen. You can see a little bit of the lightning in the back. The sky is incredibly dark, and it makes the rest of the foliage look very dark. And it's just, the painting is so rich in color and so bright. And for me personally, it makes me feel a lot more than the Renaissance, the Florentine paintings, and even the painting by Bellini, which is Venetian technically, that I just showed you. So Giorgione remains one of the main inspiration for Titian throughout his life, and they worked a lot together. And Giorgione, who was known, and the Giorgione was a nickname that was given to him, and it means very large. He truly was a large man, and he was known as the kind of man who really enjoys all the different pleasures that life provides. And I think that also helped Titian really connect with him. And I think Giorgione was the kind of teacher that really brought this out in Titian, to be able to connect the beauty of the divine and the life around us, to enjoy the bright, vibrant colors, and at the same time the subjects that are a lot more deep and philosophical in many ways, to bring out the human in the characters, which I think, Titian went even further with that, and we will see that today with you. I have to show you this piece from the Hermitage by Giorgione, known as Judas. And this is one of the most remarkable examples of the artist, again, combining sort of the divine and the mundane, combining our life on earth and the divine. And really, the connector between the two worlds is Judith. You can see her incredibly vertical figure at the very center of this very long painting. And half of her has the sky as the background, the sky with incredibly rich blue and purple hues. The other half has the earth with the warm earthly tones. And as you know, if you know the story of Judith, she just beheaded Holofernes, the head of the camp that invaded Judith's people. She just beheaded him, and she basically saved her people from them. And in a very delicate way, she just steps on the head, but her face reflects complete peace, and all is quiet in this painting. We also get to really marvel at the beautiful tones of her dress, and you might be able to notice a tiny splotch of dark gray here in the top left corner of the painting. That was actually left there by the restorers at the Hermitage to remind us that the entire painting was covered by this layer of gray dirt. They cleaned it up, and the entire time the visitors and the workers of the Hermitage thought of it as quite a dark painting. And once they cleaned it, everybody got to witness these beautiful and bright colors. And so some early works by Titian are inspired a lot by these pieces by Giorgione, but very soon Titian moves forward with his works and creates pieces that, while they incorporate the beautiful rich colors that can be seen in the works by Giorgione or Bellini, he adds a lot more real human emotion and a lot more passion to his works. This piece here was created for a cathedral in Venice that is called Santa Maria Gloriosa dei Frari. And so it's not a painting that you get to see in the museum, and you really get to see it as part of the interior, and it is very, very impressive. You see some elements of classic Renaissance here. For example, of course, symmetry. Perfect symmetry. In fact, you can see that the figures here in the painting form this beautiful triangle, right? The lines go from bottom to top, creating this triangle that at the top of which is the head of Virgin Mary, which is quite, quite a feature of Renaissance. But for me, Titian brings this with the help of this triangle, even though it's a symmetrical figure, with the help of this triangle, Titian really adds a lot more passion and a lot more heat to the painting. There are very dramatic gestures here in the painting, which is something you would not see in a Florentine Renaissance piece. Let me show you again piece by Raphael so that you can compare. There's not as much drama in this piece, even though it's a triangle as well, right? On the left. So I think comparing these two pieces really helps us understand why Titian stands out. And let me show you what it looks like in the interior of the church. Here it is on our screens. So imagine walking into this secluded chapel and seeing this, and as you walk in, you see Virgin Mary in front of you, and you go in, and this triangle is almost like the continuation of your way. I think that is incredibly beautiful. So this piece is really what makes Titian the new superstar of Venice. New commissions start pouring in, and when you create a piece for a religious subject, especially to be displayed in the church, you still have to contain yourself. But once you work for private clients, once you work for to decorate their palazzos, you can do so much more, and you can work so much more freely. And we see it in this piece called Bacchus and Ariadne. It's actually one of the three pieces that Titian created for this one customer. And compared to, again, some of the Florentine Renaissance pieces, and really just pieces created by Titian's contemporaries, I showed you some earlier. This piece already, and this is quite early in Titian's career, this piece is already so much more dynamic and so much more dramatic. A little backstory of Bacchus and Ariadne. So Ariadne was in love with Theseus, who unfortunately abandoned her on her island, and while she was in tears, weeping that her loved one left her, Bacchus, the god of wine, the god of fun, a beautiful young man with a crown of grapevines decorating his head, he was in love with her, and he races towards her, hoping to be with her. And then mythology differs, but basically he either crowns her with a crown of stars. You can see it in the sky, known as the Northern Crown constellation, or in another version, gives her the whole sky. Either way, both very generous gifts. However, she does not want him. She is still crying for her loved one who left her. And Titian, in a very genius way, shows this contradiction by showing us two lines, two lines of composition that go in two completely different directions. So Bacchus and his entourage moving towards Ariadne, and this is the line going from top right corner of the painting towards the bottom left, basically, really towards Ariadne. And then if you see her body and the way her body is leaning is away from them. And just by even creating these two lines of composition, Titian creates this contradiction and conflict between the two forces. But then on top of it, he also uses the means of light and shade, right? The team, all the people behind Bacchus are way more shaded. There are these beautiful dark trees around them, while the area that surrounds Ariadne is a lot more light. And then interestingly enough, he also shifts the center of the composition from the middle of the painting towards the left. And that is quite revolutionary for Renaissance. As you remember, symmetry really matters. And symmetry here is changed and it's shifted. And that creates a lot more drama. Oh, people absolutely love Titian's pieces. He gains even more popularity and works a lot more. And when that happens to you, you start creating a lot of portraits. And certainly Titian is an incredible portrait master. He starts working with Spanish nobility and creates a lot of portraits for them. And another kind of customer and a kind of order that he often receives is wedding portraits or wedding present paintings. That often, when we think of a wedding portrait, would involve the bride and the groom together with a beautiful, peaceful background. Well, not for Titian. He is a lot more creative and creates one of the wedding portraits that he creates is this masterpiece known as Sacred and Profane Love. And I certainly feel that I don't even fully grasp the meaning of this painting, and different art historians to this day also argue about the meaning of this painting. But ultimately, what the majority of them agree on is this is the depiction of the bride in two different images, in two different looks. One being sacred love, the other one being profane love. And this is where even here art historians argue. Some believe that the profane love is the woman that is wearing a dress as a representation of Titian's contemporary. And the woman on the right would be the sacred love. She's like a goddess here. Now, there is also the opposite view on this. The woman wearing a dress is a lot more prudent than the other one, sitting on the right side of this beautiful fountain. Regardless of what this could possibly represent, the sacred and profane love is a manifesto of Titian's in a way, because here, as clearly as ever, he manifests that he really believes in this connection and this combination of the sacred and the profane. There were schools of thought in Venice at that time that also believed in that the sacred and the profane love don't have to be mutually exclusive, and that the profane love, in a way, is just um, a way of expressing the sacred love that people have, and both work perfectly together in harmony. Um, the woman that you see in this painting is, yes, of course, is a portrait of the bride for whom the painting was created, but in it you can also recognize Titian's perfection and what he believes is the perfection of beauty. And without doubt, it's based on one of the loves of his life, whose name was Cecilia. She worked for Titian, helping him manage his household. But he was the kind of artist who was fully focused on his art and his work, and was not fully committing to her, even after she birthed two sons for him. They still weren't officially married, even though she went everywhere with him and traveled wherever he went. But, however, when she got sick, and Titian wanted to make sure that she doesn't pass away without being officially his wife. So they do get married, and when she passes away, Titian takes his sons, and they together move into a new house where they start a new artist workshop and start working together there. He definitely was very devastated by the death of the woman he loved so much, and he even then contemplates a lot more the connection between the sacred and the life around us, the light and the darkness. And this painting, I think, also is just a wonderful example of how he makes the two worlds work together so beautifully. Annunciation, an iconic subject for an artist. But I think that the use of light and shade in combination with those Venetian bright colors in this painting just are absolutely incredible. Virgin Mary here is largely a representation of our mortal world. That's why largely most of her body is covered with this dark cape. But as she is receiving the great news that is shown with the beautiful beam of light that is going towards her, the world around her starts gaining beautiful and bright color. And ultimately, again, the center of the composition, I believe, is shifted to onto the face of Virgin Mary that is beautifully lit up and is one of the most lit up parts of the painting. But Titian, he doesn't forget his beautiful Cecilia, and there are lots of wonderful pieces depicting her. The Hermitage has an incredible room of Titian. I want to show you this one, as known Venus in front of the mirror. And this painting, I think, is a wonderful example of, again, just Titian bringing a lot more life, a lot more flesh and blood into his pieces. The way that Titian works, especially when depicting beautiful female body, is that he wants to emphasize the paleness, which at that time was considered, the ideal beauty, ideal shade of female skin, and the liveliness. So in the parts of Venus's body that are perfectly lit up, as you can see, these parts are very, very white, as white as they can be. However, when we talk about layers of paint, towards the very bottom, the base that Titian uses is often red. He often uses the red base. And when he creates the shaded parts of Venus's body, what he does is he uses less layers of white paint, so the red background starts shining through the white paint. And so the shades, when it comes to showing the female body, the shades are actually hues of red. As I said, that gives the female body a lot more flesh and blood. But when we think about depictions of beautiful women by Titian, of course, I have to mention the gorgeous Venus of Urbino that is located at the Uffizi Gallery in Florence. Not only is this believed to be one of the best depictions of female beauty, it also is believed to be one of the most provocative depictions of Venus in art history. And when you think about it, well, people in the 15th and 16th century were easy to provoke, we might think. However, even Mark Twain himself, when he traveled around Italy and stepped into the Uffizi, he was shocked and even appalled by this painting. And he called her shameless. He called her perverse. Why is it so? Why were people so shocked by this depiction of Venus? And some of them are even shocked to this day. You won't believe it, but it's all in one small gesture. The thing is, when artists of that time depicted sleeping Venus or standing Venus, the iconic gesture was known as the prudent Venus gesture. And basically, Venus is covering, the front of her body with a flat hand. However, in a very suggestive way, Titian makes his Venus curve her fingers a little bit. And that is what shocks the crowd because of all the possible suggestions that it might entail. However, I'm going to show you, I told you that I was going to tell you more about the influence of Giorgione on Titian, and here we go. Giorgione also created a painting known as the Sleeping Venus, and here I feel like the hand is no flatter than in the piece by Titian. However, there was no shock and nobody called this piece provocative. I believe that it must be in the combination of looking the viewer straight in the eye and holding your hand like this, because here she is supposed to be sleeping, but in Titian's version, she is looking straight at us. Probably that is why. Beautiful women were not the only subjects of Titian's portraits. He also created portraits of some of the important people, but he also adds a lot more drama and a lot more psychology to these portraits. They are not just official depictions of the people who rule the world. No, there is so much more life here in these pieces. Here, for example, is a piece, a portrait of Pope Paul III. And what we see here is not necessarily a man of power. This is, one would say, is a portrait of a wise man. Um, Yet at the same time, there is certain sadness and definitely tiredness that we can see in his look. On the next slide, on the right, is the portrait of Pope Julius II by Raphael. I love comparing Titian with Raphael. And on the left is a copy of that portrait that was created by Titian. And I think this is another just perfect way of showing the contrast between the two pieces. If when I look at the portrait by Raphael, I perceive the Pope as quite a philosopher, maybe contemplating something and staring into space. In a piece by Titian, I think he's staring into space for some other reason. Again, he has this very tired look in his face. The wrinkles are so much more pronounced, and in general, the face is so much more darkened, that you can see, again, a lot more drama in this depiction of this powerful, yet very tired man who has seen a lot, certainly, in his life. A couple more pieces by Titian at the Hermitage that I want to show you that, again, just showcase the wonderful combination of, our human mortal life and the divine. I'm going to zoom in here for a second. Here we go. A painting that he created multiple versions of, all because of how popular it was. He was a wonderful entrepreneur as well, known as Danae. Danae was a woman whose father was predicted that he would be killed by his own grandson, so he goes and locks his daughter in a tower. However, so of course, so that she does not give birth to the grandson. However, Zeus falls in love with Danae and he starts visiting her. You can see in this version by Titian, Zeus visits Danae as a shower of golden coins. And it is definitely a love scene, even though technically only one participant of the love scene is shown. But we can see the other lover here, and it is the golden coins. And if you see where the coins are falling, it is definitely, again, very suggestive, a very sensual painting. Titian here highlights, again, the beautiful female body, using the same effects that I mentioned before. Very, very bright, pale skin in the highlighted parts, but shades of red when it comes to the shades in the body. It is a very lively kind of white. If you compare this color, the color of her skin, with the color of the sheets that are a lot more cold, you can really see the warmth of her body. Another point of contrast here is the servant on the right, much darker, much more wrinkly skin, and she's desperately trying to catch those coins with her apron, whether trying to protect Danae or maybe trying to get some coins for herself. We can't really tell. So there is certain element of humor and irony too. So again, I think in a very genius way, Titian does it here. Finally, you probably already recognize Cecilia in a lot of these paintings. She was definitely a huge inspiration for him. Mary Magdalene. What a wonderful combination, again, of simple human passions and mortality and the divine nature. It's believed that after the death of Jesus, Mary Magdalene made it all the way to France, where she spent a long time praying in a cave. She denied herself of satisfying the most basic needs, and eventually she even lost all of her clothes just because she was just praying so passionately. And it's believed that all that was covering her body was just her beautiful long hair. And even though there is some clothes covering the body of Mary Magdalene, you can see also the beautiful long hair covering her body. So the viewer seeing this depiction of Mary Magdalene would marvel at her beautiful body, yet it's the subject. In this version, as you can see, it's called Repentant Mary Magdalene, but in some versions they also call it the Ecstasy of Mary Magdalene. Has such a divine nature, right? As she is praying, she is connecting with the Holy Spirit. What a wonderful combination, again, of both worlds. And if you remember The Tempest by Giorgione, where he depicts the mood of the painting by means of landscape, something we, as you know, in the modern day are so used to, but it is very revolutionary in a way for that time. You can see the sky that is painted so marvelously. On one hand, the sky is quite dark. It's not the bright sky, but at the bottom here, we can see a little bit of light. So we can assume that this is maybe sunrise, a symbol of hope, a symbol of enlightenment. And behind Mary Magdalene, we can see the dark cave. And it's hard to tell. There is a tree, I think, growing out of the cave, but it does create an impression of maybe even some dark creature hiding in there. I'll show you the bottom of the painting too, with a couple other wonderful pieces. A glass vase that Titian is trying to depict the texture of glass here, and the skull, which also is a symbol of repentance. Towards the end of his career, Titian starts moving even further away from the line and the composition, and even more towards the use of color. And when you see some of his latest pieces, sorry, here we go, like this Saint Sebastian, for example, you can see that even more. I want to first draw your attention to the background here behind Saint Sebastian to show you that it's hard to discern what's in the background. It's basically just color, pure color that depicts the mood of the painting. And when I mean the mood of the painting, I mean probably agony, suffering. And Titian is able to show it just with the means of color. That same mood is also reflected in the face of Saint Sebastian that you see here. And that whole general mood of agony can be seen throughout the whole painting. Really, when you look closely at the painting, you can see that it's not, the lines in the painting are not very pronounced. He starts using much broader brushstrokes, and you can see how, for example, future impressionists or other art schools of the 19th century would be greatly inspired by a piece like this. I want to compare this with an early Saint Sebastian, and you can see the difference. I don't see much suffering in this piece. It's just a celebration of a beautiful, strong human body, the divine nature of this particular character. It's so much different than a late work that we got to see there at the Hermitage. And a lot of late works by Titian have a similar mood. This is one of my most favorite pieces. There's so much movement, there is so much drama, not only in the faces of the people, but also in their gestures. Titian, in a very genius way here, also uses shade and light. If you look at the body of Jesus Christ, it is much lighter than all the other bodies. Yet he still pays tribute to the Venetian School of Art in a way that he uses these incredibly bright colors when depicting not only Jesus, but also the people around him. And towards the end of his life, he really dedicates most of his pieces to studying human nature. And when we think of Florentine Renaissance, that would be unheard of in works of Florentine Renaissance. All the faces there are just filled with peace and tranquility. They are supposed to give us peace and tranquility. Here they evoke completely different emotions. And finally, the culmination of this is my most favorite piece by Titian. Here he already, this I think is a quintessential example of how he stands out from the Florentine school, right? There's not as many bright colors here anymore, just very well pronounced emotions. Just little details in the face of Jesus Christ really show us all the suffering that he's going through. And it is a divine character experiencing human suffering, real human emotions. We can see here a lot less line and a lot more color, much more pronounced brush strokes. And even the materials and the textures that Titian depicts in this piece are a lot more from the human world, the world around us. Wood, fabric, flesh, and even blood. You can see drops of blood here on the body of Jesus Christ as well. And I think this is, I promised you in the beginning of my talk that I would try my best to explain why I like Titian and how well he was able to combine the two worlds, the world of humans and the divine world. And I think ultimately this is the painting that shows it the best. And this is the painting that stands out from the rest of Renaissance and leads us into the next Baroque era. And with this last piece, I would love to pause here and answer your questions. Please feel free to type them in the chat. While you do, I will answer the question about how my baby is. And he's doing really well. He turned 2 in May, and he had a Sesame Street themed party. He's a very mellow toddler, so I feel like I really lucked out. He's very calm. He likes to sit down and play. He loves to read books, and what makes me really happy, he really likes to paint. So we paint a lot together. As you can imagine, he creates very abstract pieces. He loves line and color. So let's see, if you have any questions, please feel free to share them in the chat. Once again, I just am so grateful that you keep joining me for these talks. Yes. As I mentioned, I will make up for the Russian icon stores that we missed, but it will not be in September. It will probably be in October or November. And just stay tuned. I will definitely share that information in the newsletter. I have a question whether I recommend any books on Titian. Wonderful question. Let me show you the series. they are not these books that I like. They're not dedicated to Titian in particular, but I highly recommend them just in general on Italian Renaissance. And there are chapters on Titian in there. They call that The Civilization of the Renaissance in Italy by Jacob Burckhardt. And there are 2 volumes. So this is a good place to start. So feel free to start there. And I think Titian, I think understanding Titian is best in context of Renaissance. So yeah, fingers seemed very elongated in many of the pieces. Do you think that was an intentional style or something else? What a wonderful question. Thank you, Sharon. That would be my personal opinion. But when people talk about Titian, oftentimes they attribute his works to the school of mannerism. And elongated bodies in general and elongated fingers were quite a common feature of mannerism. Let me see if I can show you some mannerism works. Since we are already at the Hermitage, I can probably really quickly jump to the mannerism rooms and show you. But when you think of El Greco, for example, with his elongated figures, oftentimes, El Greco, some art historians believe El Greco to be also attributed to mannerism. So I would say, in my opinion, that is probably the feature of mannerism and late Renaissance. So you can see some of the elongated mannerist figures here. Or, for example, I think you can see it very well here. And this one, I think, is another wonderful example. Another wonderful example of elongated mannerism figures. And so fingers would often too be elongated in those pieces. So that would be my answer to that question. Let me see. Did I miss any questions? Was he well received during his lifetime or very controversial? He was very well received. I think that the people were ready. It was late Renaissance and people were very much ready to see a lot more life and a lot more passion. So no, he was a great entrepreneur on top of being a very talented artist, and he did incredibly well. I mean, it can be illustrated by the fact that he created portraits of the popes, multiple popes. All right, I think I have answered all the questions so far. I will upload the recording on the YouTube channel shortly. Definitely it will be there by Monday, which is when I will send out the actually no, the September newsletter is coming out not in a couple days, but later. Anyway, I will upload the recording shortly, so you can find it on the channel, and then you will definitely see the link to it in the September newsletter. Thank you again so much for joining me today, and I hope to see you next month.